Welcome to another month of romance video. So I often see a common issue with romance novels is that they're not feminist, that they're not good for women, they demean women, etc. My response is, what is more feminist than books that are primarily written by women, about women, for women? Oh, did you want more than that? Oh, okay. So I actually earlier this year read the Romance Book Club and I tabbed this quote that I thought was pretty funny. And it kind of relates to this topic. So yeah. And that is, it kind of repeats what I just said, right? Romance novels are primarily written by women for women, and they're entirely about how they want to be treated and what they want out of life and in a real relationship. We read them to be more comfortable expressing ourselves and to look at them from their perspective. And then they're talking about historical romance and how is that relevant? And this one guy, Malcolm, says, it is actually. Modern romance novelists use the patriarchal society of old British aristocracy to explore the gender-based limitations placed on women today in both the professional and personal spheres. That shit is feminist as fuck. Could not have said it any better myself, Malcolm / Lisa K. Adams. Truth. But I also did some research and found some articles, and so I kind of wanted to talk about some stuff from them. So I will link the articles down below. I just think that these were some interesting ideas and concepts. So this one is from a Bustle article, and it kind of addresses this idea of romance as being a guilty pleasure. And this is a quote in it, and it says, "Of course you've been taught to feel guilty about reading romance novels. They're practically the only books in which women get exactly what they want all of the time and aren't asked to feel bad for it." And so I think that's true, and I think it's really sad that especially women, I mean, anyone can read romance, and especially now the romance genre is expanding. It's becoming more inclusive in a ton of ways, but it is still primarily a female and woman-centered genre, both in content and creation and reading. And it hurts my heart when people bash romance and say it's not feminist, or say it's crappy or poorly written or not worthwhile. But especially when women say that to other women, I feel like that's extra bad. And then this one kind of addresses the sex aspect, and that's a guilty pleasure. That is assuming that we consider female pleasure at all. Far more frequently when it comes to sex and sex education, girls and women are left to choose between being the givers or objects of pleasure or playing defense against the raging conquest of men. But not so in contemporary feminist romance, where mutual consent, safe sexual exploration, and women's empowered awareness of what turns us on frequently reigns supreme. Additionally, feminist romance offers models of consent and conversations about sex and sexuality rarely seen elsewhere, alongside critical analysis of sexual power structures. The women in feminist romance aren't just empowered enough to ask for what they want in sex and relationships, they often feel entitled to it. Sexual entitlement being a uniquely male privilege until perhaps recently, at least in fiction. And I think it's true, and I think it's really sad that that's something that gets overlooked by readers and non-readers of the genre. And I'm not saying I think, reading a romance novel has to be this huge critical experience and that you have to look at it and you have to do a gender analysis and put it on, give it a grade on that. I'm not saying that at all. Read books to read books and enjoy them, and that's primarily what I'm doing. But there is so much more to romance than meets the eye, and I think popular fiction is, and not just popular fiction, but TV shows, movies, I think that they're a huge change agent in our society, for good and for bad. Sorry, my cat is playing with the rug. Not to go off on a tangent, but this is kind of an example, is I don't necessarily have proof of this, But I think the existence of shows like Will and Grace and Ellen DeGeneres, both her scripted show and then her talk show, I think shows like that and everything normalizing like an other group, like a minority group in that case, parts of the LGBTQ plus community, creates this, it exposes people to groups of people or individuals in a way they may not be exposed to in their everyday life, and that creates change, or at least starts to break down barriers in some way in their heads. And I think in a lot of ways that's what romance is doing here. Like, women, I talk about this in my unrealistic expectations video, right? Like, women should be fine and should be comfortable asking for what they want and enjoying themselves, like in a sexual relationship, in any relationship, whether sex or not is involved. And romance has addressed that, and I think that it may be overreaching to say that the romance novel genre is like the reason for change, but I think it's a contributing factor, and it's part of a larger soup of craziness that's going on. And then I guess just like the last quote I'll highlight is from bitchmedia.org, and this is actually it's them quoting an editorial from Jennifer Weiner, who wrote that we need bodice ripper sex education because romance novels taught readers that sexual pleasure was something women could not just hope for but insist upon. And again, I just think that that's really important, and I think that these books open up a dialogue and a conversation, and even if they're not perfect, it's good to have that conversation. Like, if there are consent issues in a romance, then, and a lot of times I think it's kind of a gray area, and I can see why some people are okay with it, some people aren't. But if nothing else, it opens up the door to having those conversations and what it should look like, and what kind of conversations you should have in a relationship, and what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, or what you want, or what you think you need as a woman, as an individual, as a person in a relationship. I don't know. If I feel like that may have been a little rambly and incoherent. I'm sorry, I've been trying to avoid the incoherent videos for this series of videos, but this may not have been my best. I'm sorry. But yeah, so let me know what you think. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, if you are more eloquent than me, go for it. You probably are. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with another video. Bye.